Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Waterfront for All Annual General Meeting and Waterfront Review. We are pleased to have three special guests with us this evening: Kevin Greene, the Chief Operating Officer of Waterfront Toronto; Bryan Bowen, Director of Portlands from CreateTO; and Johanna, Kyte, Senior Manager, Community and Government Relations for the Toronto Region and Conservation Authority, TRCA. And of course, our chair, Ed, as many of you know who attended our previous AGMs, Ed will give a brief, succinct, and helpful year in review to kick us off in just a moment. As we've mentioned in the materials we've emailed out to everyone, if you received an email that said you are a member, either representing an organizational member or an individual member, someone who's given us at least $20 in the past year, or has given us $140 for a lifetime membership, you are entitled to vote at what will be our brief and snappy formal AGM, which will come following our speakers and a brief Q&A. Now, considering we have a lot to do this evening and we have multiple very interesting speakers, we are going to run. We will have a limited time for a Q&A, and we're going to run the Q&A as you put your questions in the chat. We will monitor the chat, and we will try to ask as many of those questions as we can, but we can't guarantee we will necessarily get to every single one. However, the good thing is we save the chat from these meetings. We all, as you know, we're recording this meeting, and both the text of the chat as well as, of course, the visual recording and audio and visual recording of the meeting itself. And we will always be able to follow up. And if you say, "Oh gosh, I didn't," or you think of a question afterwards, you can always email us and ask the question, and we'll be happy to get you an answer. So I hope that will be satisfactory. And I'm just going to move on now and do our land acknowledgement. Okay. We acknowledge we are meeting on the land that is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and we are grateful for their stewardship and for the land they have cared for generations and generations. So, with no further ado, I would like to ask here, Ed, I'll just spotlight you for everyone. I would like to ask our esteemed chair, Ed Hore, to give us his 2026 version of the Waterfront Year in Review. Go ahead, Ed.
Okay, thanks. I always promise every year that I'll be 10 minutes, so super quick. There's a lot to go through. There's a paper that I write every year. We'll send it out after the meeting. Just posted actually on the website under documents as well. So here we go. Basically, just going to go through kind of the headings. Oakwood Menacing grand opening. This was the big year, July 18th. There was an opening. Probably many of you went. There's some thinking going on at City Hall about what's going to go on the island. The island is almost 100 acres. About 48 will be streetscapes and buildings, and so there's thinking about what to go on it. There's a kind of a roadmap that's in a report by the Waterfront Secretary that you got to look at. There's a link in my paper. Waterfront Toronto has been listening to what people would like to see on the island, and they've produced an engagement report called Following the River, which was released in December 2025. Quayside, Waterfront Toronto has finished the infill project at the Parliament Slip. So that means it doesn't have a kind of a spiky triangular shape anymore. The infill will enable Queens Quay East to be extended east towards Cherry Street and also allow the LRT to go in. One day we'll probably see, there was a cool time lapse of that that they posted a couple days ago, also a kind of a thing called an animation, I guess you'd call it, called Explore the Experience that went up last week. It's very interesting. Just shows how that part of the city will evolve in future years. There's going to be affordable housing at Quayside. Developers don't seem to want to build condos anymore, so there's going to be a lot more rental housing, low-income housing than was previously the case. The all timber building is not part of the plan anymore, but there's still going to be a 2-acre community forest. The water's edge promenade, the Merchant's Wharf, is now complete, which means that you can walk from Sugar Beach to Parliament Slip. There's some restaurants, and there's a grocery store called Marché Leo's, which just opened recently. There's some art being created in the public realm there. Speaking of restaurants, Queen's Harbor Restaurant opened up at Queen's Quay near the Marine Police. You need a reservation to get in. It gets pretty crowded. Waterfront East LRT. I don't know if Kevin's going to be able to tell us when shovels might be in the ground. As I understand it, we're still waiting for funding commitment from the feds and from the province to get that going. It's 3.8 kilometers long. A lot of it's underground. Segment 1, that's the part from Ontario Place to Queen's Quay. The last update to City Council was a bit over a year ago now. It's January 2025, so there'll be a new update pretty soon. Limberlost Place opened at George Brown College. That's the School of Architectural Studies. It's an all timber building, or mostly timber. Pretty cool. You can go in and walk around, and it kind of smells of wood. It's neat. New ferries are coming this year. As you probably know, there's a naming committee that's been formed. We'll get the first of those ferries later this year, another one the following year, 2 more are budgeted for years to come. The Waterfront Secretariat wrote a kind of an interesting report this year on the waterfront program, which looks at Etobicoke waterfront and at Scarborough and says, how can we spruce up the Etobicoke waterfront, which is kind of different from downtown, partly because some of it's privately owned. There's a lot of backyards, but there are something like 17 parks, and how can they be linked up and so on. So there's never been a planning process out there, so they're going to do that now. We're going to hear from Johanna Kyte, who we love to have every year, who's going to tell us about what's going on in the Scarborough Bluffs. The main thing that I guess is interesting is that the long range plan, there's an environmental assessment getting going and so on, but the long range plan, I think, or at least the thing that they're seriously considering is, should there be a multi-use path that would go right along the Scarborough Bluffs, right from basically the beaches to Bluffers Park further on, and is it feasible? There's a lot of concerns there about environmental sensitivity. It's dangerous in parts and all that kind of stuff. But can it be done? That's really what they're looking into, which I think is great. The Western Beaches, there was some consultation done. There's going to be a Western Beaches plan in early 2026, looking at trails and parks and so on out there. That's basically Humber Bay. The Waterfront Secretariat has written a report, a couple of reports actually, about what to do about, first of all, the breakwaters out in the Western Beaches, which are falling down. They're kind of 100 years old, and they need some tender loving care. There's also going to be a look at the dock walls. I think Bryan Bowen is going to talk a little bit about that, because CreateTO will have a role in that. There's a lot of dock walls that are falling down. I've complained about it in the past. Parts of it seem dangerous to me, so I'm glad that the city is sort of looking at it, thinking about priorities and so on. We're going to hear from Bryan, I think, about what's going on in the Portlands, which CreateTO controls some land down there. That land is open presumably for development because of the flood protection program. We had in 2024 a kind of a slightly off the wall speaker series event on, should there be a bridge over the eastern gap to the island? And whether for that reason or for some reason, City Council directed staff to look at that, and they issued a report in April that said, well, the bridge would have to be 12 stories high. It'd be hard to ride a bike over it, and it would cost $100 million. And so I don't think we'll be seeing that happen anytime really soon, but the report is interesting to read. There's been some thought given to an east-west sea bus, or some kind of a link that would go along the waterfront or have some kind of route there. There was a sea bus feasibility study that was released in October by a consultant, considers various routes, interesting reading. Lake Story was a canoe procession on the harbor that you may have seen. A lot of canoes. I didn't go in it because they didn't want to have kayak, but it was very nice to look at. Lake level is pretty much stable this year. We haven't had a repeat of the flood years in 2017 and 2019. Ward's Island, we don't know when there's going to be a new Ward's Island clubhouse. You recall that the old one burned down in 2024. They did build a kind of a seasonal shelter next door. Toronto Island Park Plan, there's various committees looking at that. Barbara Clunder, who was a kind of a famous artist, lives on Toronto Island, released a book in December that she kindly sent me a copy of. It's called How I Got My Island House, Toronto Island True Stories. And it's a kind of a social history on how various people came to be living on Toronto Island. It's worth having a look. I've included a link to where you can get a copy. I also like to mention the 4.3 billion wet weather flow master plan project, because that's a massive project going on. It won't be done until the 30s, but that's basically 22 kilometers of tunnel that are going to prevent nasty, smelly stuff from going in the lake when it rains, which is a great thing. In connection with that, I'd like to mention a video that I ran across, posted in the fall. It's a historical video called Why Toronto Buried Its Lost Rivers, and it's on an American social media channel called It's History. There's a link in the paper. I recommend it. It's kind of cool. It's all about all the sewers and underground rivers and all that. Asbridges Bay Landform, we've got Johanna Kyte. She's going to tell us about. One of the things she's going to tell us about is the 67 acres of reclaimed land, the northeast shore of the Leslie Street Spit. I think it's after about 10 years. It's almost done now. There's going to be, I think, some trails and some landscaping this year, so we'll be able to go and walk around on it. Corlec Building, I think Bryan will talk about. This is a building that's at the Bathurst Quay Common that's going to open this year. It's going to have an arts facility. Reef Street Park, I think it's going to be, they're going to start it this year. There's a new park at 50 Queens Quay. Harbourfront Center is going to be the interim location of the Ontario Science Center. Billy Bishop Airport, Porter is pulling out of one of their flights, which is the one to Sudbury, and they're relocating. The number of flights in general is going down, but Air Canada said it's going to move some flights in there. So it's hard to know. The overall number of flights is down by quite a lot from past years. Porter's clearly seems to be moving more to jets, which of course must be flown out of Pearson. The RISA will go ahead. These are the extensions at the runway, and work will be done on them this year, as I understand it. Ontario Place litigation. The Supreme Court of Canada granted leave to a case called Ontario Place Protectors. So that was interesting. That happened in January. Exhibition Place, there's lots coming up. We've got FIFA World Cup, 6 games coming up. It's going to be crazy. Cabana Pool Bar noise litigation. There's been years of litigation between the Islanders and Cabana Pool Bar. Personal watercraft safety program. That's something the city has initiated in the last couple of days, basically to do with jet skis and what concerns people have. That's about it. Oh, the St. Marie one, which is a tour boat, sank a few days ago, and I was walking along there today, and I saw a salvage crew including divers, trying to figure out how to get it out of the bottom of up from the bottom of the harbor. That's it.
Thank you very much, Ed. I really
I think it was
appreciate
just
that.
about 10 minutes. There we go.
Yes, you're a rock star. That's pretty good. You are a model for all of us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So it is my pleasure to introduce Kevin with his from Waterfront Toronto with his delightful dark red background, which is very cool. So Kevin, yes, you haven't been, we never had the privilege of having you with us before. So thank you for coming, and we look forward to hearing your presentation. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Ed, and thank you for that presentation. You covered a lot of the materials that I have on my list, so hopefully this is not too duplicative. Good evening, everybody. I'm Kevin Greene. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at Waterfront Toronto. I'm so pleased to be here with you guys this evening, and also to be joined with our other partners at CreateTO and TRCA, who you'll hear from later. I've got a little presentation I'm going to go through, and if this works, hopefully you'll be able to see it. Let's just make sure that it works. Let me know if you can see that, and I can begin.
You're all good.
We're all good. Okay, great. So we'll get right into it. Now, many of you know Waterfront Toronto, but for those of you who don't, give me a little time just to give you a little background on who we are. So we came together in 2001. We were brought together to tackle some of the big issues along the waterfront that only collaboration across the private sector and three governments could solve. We've been working with partners like property developers, conservationists, and community groups to try and evolve the waterfront into what you see today. We've worked with a clear set of priorities and a vision to get us where we are. We've been cleaning up post-industrial lands, flood protecting them, and planning neighborhoods and building foundations to support them for the future. Everything from stormwater management, infrastructure, all the way to public art. If you were to go back 25 years ago, some of the areas within our waterfront designated area look like this. Some of you may recognize some of these shots. For many of our formative years, our work went very much unnoticed. We were planning and designing new neighborhoods. We were cleaning contaminated soil and installed the often invisible infrastructure that's necessary to build communities from the ground up. But happy to say that after many years, 25 years of hard work, we've got some tangible results. So if you were to walk along the waterfront today, hopefully you'll see it bustling with energy. Many of these shots are real. They're not AI driven. We've introduced some iconic signatures of Toronto's waterfront, whether it be the mosaic that you see on the top left, or the Sugar Beach pink umbrellas that you see on the bottom right. And we hope that you can see the impact of almost 25 years of focused planning and implementation. The latest piece of work that we've been focusing on is flood protection. Ed talked a little bit about that. We opened some of the park system related to this in the summer on July 18th of 2025. We see flood protection as a huge game changer for the city. We first did it in West Don Lands, which was completed previously, and now we've just completed it in the Portlands. And what this has done is it's unlocked almost 500 acres for new housing and destinations. And this comes after years of community championing this revitalization and in international design competition, a 15-month due diligence study, and finally, after $1.4 billion of tri-government investment, today, many of what people thought was impossible is reality. And if any of you have not had a chance to go down there, I'd encourage you to go and see it. We've got a new revived mouth of the Don, and in doing so, we've created this new island, and it's called Waterfront. You can see it there in the middle of the screen. It's ringed with wetlands surrounding a new park named Badasagate Park. You can see, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but that's that green stretch on both sides of the river in the center of the screen. And this historic gathering place, the Don River, will now be the heart of a new community, which will be home to more than 15,000 people, and hopefully a destination for all to visit and explore. This is part of an overall plan that we've had across the broader eastern waterfront for quite some time. Ultimately, the eastern waterfront will be home to over 100,000 new residents and about 90,000 jobs. Everything to the right of the dotted line is what will be completed over the next 50 years. And now that flood protection is done, we can now move meaningfully to make that happen. We've got some really exciting projects, some of the most exciting, in fact, in the country, happening here on our waterfront. So in terms of what's next, what is our next real big push along the waterfront? You may have seen that last January, 3 orders of government committed an additional $975 million, that was $300 million each, to accelerate the next phase of waterfront revitalization. The next phase of work is intended to focus on enabling housing, advancing studies on destinations and water-based transportation. Ed talked a little bit about that, and I'll talk a bit about that in a second, and finding ways to activate this new island. We're beginning our work to install infrastructure, roads, utilities, to enable these 14,000 new homes, including affordable rental at both Quayside and on Waterfront. We'll also look to deliver a roadmap for creating a connected series of waterfront destinations to try and secure Toronto's place among the world's greatest waterfront cities. We'll also be looking at ways in how we move people on land and on water, and in addition, make sure we find ways to activate the waterfront year-round on a day just like today. So we'll start with one of the key geographies as part of our next phase revitalization, which is Quayside. So Quayside is more than a development. It's a long-term revitalization project for us. It spans about 12 acres. It is part of our next phase of revitalization. It is guided by the planning policies like the Central Waterfront Secondary Plan, the East Bayfront and Keating Precinct plans, as well as the city's community service strategy, which altogether consider all of the elements for a complete community, including services and facilities that are vital to all residents. Quayside will connect some of the city's most iconic neighborhoods like St. Lawrence, the Distillery District, and the new island of Quemin-Minising, and has ambitious goals relating to affordability, design excellence, sustainability, and community. And as Ed had mentioned in his opening remarks, much of that work is underway. Ed talked a little bit about the work that's happened here on the Parliament Slip, which you can see over to the right. So over the last 2 years, the tip of the Parliament Slip has been filled in to support one of the biggest changes, which is going to be the extension of Queen's Quay further to the east, and the realignment of Parliament Street. This next slide shows what it will look like in its final form, and it will create a more traditional intersection at both Parliament and Queen's Quay, which will improve the experience for everyone, including pedestrians and cyclists. Through this work, we're supporting connectivity now, but we're also trying to future-proof for the Waterfront East Transit, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a few minutes. These improvements to streets will also create additional development blocks, which will bring more homes and mixed-use development, including a school and a local park. For the public realm, we are leading with ecology. And you can probably tell that's a theme of ours that we've been following through for quite some time. It signals a transition from the highly urbanized city to the water's edge. Streets and a new stretch of water edge promenade will feature the signature red granite mosaic with open tree beds with more space for trees, plantings, and diverse habitats. Ed talked a little bit about the water's edge promenade that just opened. You can see a picture of it on the right-hand side, and I'd encourage you to go take a look. It is an evolution of our design, and you'll see much more plantings and naturalization in that area. Just last week, also as Ed mentioned, we launched a new interactive animation, which will allow you to explore what the new public spaces will look like, and you can find that on our website and on our social channels, and perhaps this team will also share that link with you too. When it comes to housing, here's the first phase of Quayside. We're looking to accelerate 553 affordable rental homes, building about 100 more than we thought we would originally. Importantly, this housing will focus on supporting families, with about 57% of this is of the affordable homes being 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms. And we're introducing over 1,100 new purpose-built rental homes, replacing about half of what was planned originally. And as Ed had mentioned, we've had a really tough market in the condominium market at the moment. So this pivot to purpose-built rental is actually a good move just generally. These rental properties are all advancing at the same time, with construction expected to get underway later this year, with the goal of welcoming the first new residents by 2031. The condominium portion, which you see there as phase 1A, will advance as soon as the market conditions improve. At the heart of this neighborhood is the community forest. This is a green corridor. Ed also mentioned this at the top. When complete, it will be amongst the largest and greenest privately owned public spaces in the city, forming a vibrant network of car-free spaces where neighbors can gather and friends can play. With all of our work, we continue to push towards a more sustainable future. Quayside, the development buildings you see here, will be a zero carbon certified master plan community, featuring a variety of sustainable innovations. Taking together, the community will come to life as a true ensemble of where every building and every feature plays a role in creating a distinctive water's edge community. The second phase of Quayside will follow in the next few years. For now, we're focused on phase 1, where we're advancing detailed design and site plans with the city. The second phase will comprise of a mixed-use development and also contains the school site and potentially coupled with a cultural destination and a new park, which you can see here on the right-hand side of the slide. So the next geography as part of our next phase is Aquemini. That is the new island that we've just created, part of through flood protection. Part of what we're doing to do first is to try and enable this island to now support a new community. So we've been working to design a complete community with spaces, amenities, and community services needed to ensure that this community will thrive for generations to come. We're working with a globally recognized design team, GHD, SLA, Allies and Morrison, Tropic Design, Trend-Solar, Level Playing Field, and Monumental to design the fundamentals needed to develop the island. This also includes the final piece of the Badasagay Park, along with plans to bring activity to future development blocks, maximizing housing while creating a neighborhood that feels good and sets a new precedent for urban development. What we're imagining is how the buildings can integrate with parks and the open spaces in a different way than they do now, and the ways that streets function to do more than just move people. We're looking at the importance of connecting our communities to water. That's the Don River, the Keating Channel, and the lake itself, or the harbor, and to nature. This is Badasagay Park and throughout the island and within the city. Finally, we're thinking how we can build flexibility for future so the design can adapt as the needs of the future community grows and evolves. We've got some early ideas on sort of how we want to approach this design. The first is a living legacy, which is all about our approach to incorporating heritage, land, story, and lived experiences to ensure the community reflects the past, the present, and the future of the area. Next, there's 4 characters that we're thinking about that characterize the island into 4 distinct areas. The first is the space for nature. It's all about pulling nature and greenery through the entire island to support all types of life, humans, plants, animals, and the broader island ecosystem. The next is everyday mobility. Refers to the vision for streets that do more than just move people. They help connect us to the water, to nature, and to the community. And finally, strategic density, all of which is about identifying ways to deliver more housing on the island in a new and smart way that balances increased density with a livable, human-scale neighborhood where everybody thrives. We're looking to take a new approach to address this need for housing. In spring 2024, City Council approved our plan to increase density on the island by 60% above the 2017 precinct plan, with a target of a 30% affordable housing. But they also asked that we explore and continue to explore options to add more density, and that's what we're looking at now. At full build-out, we're envisioning Aquemini to be home to about 15,000 people, with first occupants anticipated to move in by 2031. Our consultancy team, to try and look at ways to deploy this density, have come up with a series of typologies, different kinds of building types that can be mixed to add density block by block. You see them here, mid-rise, tall, mid-rise, towers. This configuration for each block allows important light to be present on the ground floor while also protecting views to the water. So in terms of what is next, right now, we're focusing on the concept design for the enabling infrastructure and streets design needed to support development. This year, we will support and submit a report to City Council on the proposed massing and built form plan for the future community. Remembering that not all of these streets and spaces we're designing will be built at the same time, much of what I've showed you on the island will be built over phases over about the next 10 to 20 years. The city is hosting a Portland's open house on March 10th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Ralph Thornton Community Center, which will include updates on Aquemini and a variety of other Portland projects. So details will be available later today on the city's social channels and on the Portland's website. So we'd love to hear from you. Engagement and consultation is very important to us. So if you'd like to share your thoughts on how you'd like to see this neighborhood be shaped, please do. And as Ed had mentioned, we've also issued our engagement report to inform what we've heard to date. And I'd also encourage you to check that The last piece of the work that we're doing here is completing the Badassigay Park system, and that is with the completion of Badassigay Park North. This is going to be designed by MVVA. This is the same team that brought us the current Badassigay Park and the Portlands project writ large. It will be one of the first of its kind, and as it will be also an event space, which will hopefully become a postcard, a signature postcard for the city with its panoramic views of the city itself. I'm also happy to say here's what we really want to accomplish, which is a vibrant waterfront year-round. And the completion of flood protection has unlocked that ability. Ed talked a little bit about the lake story, which you see on the top right. And again, these are real photos. These are not AI. But this is what our vision is. We want to bring life to our parks and to our complete communities that we're looking to build. Aquaman-Minising is hopefully going to be a landmark destination, like some of the great destinations around the world, and it's already started. We did open the parks, like I mentioned, in the summer of 2026, and we're now going to look at how we can use the newest park and the parks that are in and think about a way to activate them, both as an amenity for those who will live on the island, but also as a way to attract others to come to the island. The last piece that's part of our work moving forward as part of revitalization is a number of studies. The first of which is around destinations. And we're looking to deliver three things in this study work. First off, we're looking for some strategic direction. We want to establish a clear and evidence-based vision for destinations along the complete waterfront. Secondly, we want to highlight specific opportunity sites and potential attraction types that align and match with the broader waterfront vision. And we will be doing this work working with all of the stakeholders that we currently have along the waterfront today. Lastly, we want to provide a phased and actionable roadmap for realizing destination opportunities, ensuring that it has alignment with our delivery partners, our stakeholder priorities, and of course, the community and people like you. The last piece is the marine use strategy. And this is in partnership with the City of Toronto, the Toronto Port Authority, and the TRCA. I'm so happy that my partners are here. This is based on a 2020 marine use strategy, which aimed to balance industrial, commercial, and recreational needs, support new waterfront-based transportation, and integrate marine planning with major revitalization projects. The strategy has led to some concrete work, which includes the establishment of a Marine Coordination Committee, exploring new ways to travel with our Kiss and Sail pilot, and we're going to do that again for, I think, for the third year. And then we just completed a C-Bus feasibility study for the new water-based transit options within the Inner Harbor, and Ed mentioned that. The primary goal is to proactively manage future growth and bridge gaps in waterfront connectivity. The study outlines that the C-Bus is not feasible today, but recommended a phased approach. So this year, we are introducing an east-west water shuttle pilot to test the feasibility and passenger demand for water-based transit across the Inner Harbor. Procurement is currently underway, and we look forward to providing more information in the coming weeks on that specifically. And then finally, I just want to talk a little bit about Waterfront East Transit, something that we've long awaited and wanted and been working hard at. So it really is just a new and expanded transit project designed to help bridge communities and destinations across the eastern waterfront. By the early 2030s, the Waterfront East Transit is expected to serve more than 53,000 people, and in the long term will help enable those 100,000 residents that I spoke about earlier. We've been working closely with our partners in the City of Toronto and the TTC, and we're set to bring this vision for a big, bold transit system to life. It will connect Union Station to the Ontario line via the Corktown Station, you can see there at 504. Segment 1 includes creating an underground connection between Queens Quay and the Union Station. You can see that on the left-hand part of the screen. Segment 2 will involve reconstructing and expanding Queens Quay East all the way towards Cherry Street. If you can see my cursor, that brings you all the way to this red line here. And then finally, segment 3 will involve creating a transitway from the Distillery Loop, which goes up here, down onto Aquaman-Minising. So we're well on our way to try and making this happen. We've completed the environmental reviews and approvals necessary to begin construction, and we've undergone detailed 60% design with work advancing towards complete design. We are currently in the midst of working with our government partners to see if there's appetite to fund this, and hopefully we'll have some good news in the coming weeks. But at the moment, we're continuing to advance the work to make sure we can connect the waterfront. So I think with that, that is the end of my remarks. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your presentation. I've just got a couple of quick clarification questions. I think you've answered the question about the LRT, which is on everyone's mind. And people are feel free to call the Premier's office and ask him to fund it tomorrow. I'm sure Kevin would be happy happy about that. Now, we don't actually have anyone from the TTC or city transportation here, but Kevin, did you mention it, or because I was just admitting a couple of people who've joined us, and welcome to all of you who've managed to come in recently. Um, is there a plan for improved bus service in the interim along Queens Quay?
You know, there has already been some enhancements to bus service now. Some of the routes have been changed. You may also note that we've had some bus-only lanes that have been designated across the waterfront to try and improve the connectivity, and we have seen some great success. That has been done in conjunction with the TTC. But the next move will be to build this transit right-of-way, so that what I showed you in that map going all the way from Bay Street to Cherry is intended to be a streetcar that runs in its own right of way, and that'll be the next big
Right.
step.
That's the big expensive one, right?
Yeah,
That hasn't does not have dedicated funding attached to it at present, right?
that's correct.
And in terms of the maintenance of the stuff that you guys have the pleasure of overseeing, now when you like, for example, when you hand over a park space to the city, then PFR becomes responsible for maintaining it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So roadways and parks become the city's responsibility. Sidewalks, the same thing.
It really depends, but yes, you're right. Parks go to PFNR, and streets will go to transportation services, and then are maintained by the city.
And the waterfront promenade is that who looks after that?
Waterfront promenade is generally taken care of by parks.
Okay, fair. Thank you. Yeah, as you can imagine, that those things are not always clear to people, right? The who does what of it. Um, Thanks. And whether the Parliament slip, that wonderful drawing we saw a while ago, a Parliament slip with a extended quay and pool, whether that.
Yeah, so that was a very exciting concept that we put forward, which is the Parliament Street activation, which, yes, you're right, the slip was going to be activated with some concession stands, a wave deck, and some pools. We did try to see if we could get funding for that, but unfortunately, we were not able to. It doesn't mean that the project won't happen, but I mentioned the destination strategy work that we're just starting. That will also think about whether that type of idea is something that we can bring forward on the waterfront in future phases.
So that would be rolled into the destination strategy
Yeah,
as
the
opposed to a
strategy,
standalone, right?
that's right. The strategy is kind of taking a holistic look of everything across the waterfront, everything from Ontario Place to now Badasque Park, to try and understand what are the right assets and what are the right pieces of destination infrastructure that we need to have along that route. And it is quite possible that Parliament Slip could be one of those things.
Right. Okay, and there's not going to be a farm garden thing now in the reimagined housing, rental housing on Queens Quayside, correct?
On Quayside, I think there still is going to be a smaller version of the roof farm.
Okay.
But I'll have to check on that and give you that exact answer. But I do believe they are going to continue to do that on top of course,
That's
the
my
urban forest
understanding.
garden,
Is there is still going to be a rooftop garden, but smaller, you know.
a little smaller. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right then. I think if you can stop sharing your
Oh, am I still
presentation.
sharing? Jeez.
Yes, you're still there. You go. Thank you so much. That's great. All right. Thanks very much. And we are going to move to our next presentation. Thank you, Kevin and Brian.
Yes. Edward, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. Let me find you here. Okay. There we go. You are
Perfect.
spotlighted for everyone.
Thank you. And I know we had discussed at the beginning that I would go after Kevin. I'm beginning to question the wisdom of that, Kevin. That was a wonderful presentation. So thank you for that. I want to make sure if is my slide up there now?
It's coming. There it is. If you just
It's up.
want to, yeah, it's up.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, thank you, first of all, for inviting me to be here this evening. My name is Bryan Bowen, and I am a director with the Portlands team at CreateTO. I'm really thrilled that this is my first official Waterfront for All appearance as a CreateTO employee since I've taken on this role just over a year ago. If my name is familiar to some of you here, it's because I've had the privilege of presenting to Waterfront for All at various presentations and at AGMs in the past. Really primarily in my former capacity as the city's project lead for the Bathurst Quay presentation. And I thought, if nothing else, just kind of for old time's sake, I might kick things off with just a brief summary of how things are going since we first broke ground on the Bathurst Quay neighborhood plan, and then I'll quickly launch into a discussion about what we're up to here at CreateTO. So some of you will, I hope, be familiar with the Bathurst Quay project. It proceeded through a six-phase revitalization, totaling about $70 million in investment on the historic Canada malting property, which is now very exciting to say nearing completion. A reminder, this project began as a city-led but fundamentally a community-driven planning process known as the Bathurst Quay Neighborhood Plan, which was a planning document and a master plan created by the Bathurst Quay community and adopted by City Council, and did form a number of site-specific amendments to official plan policies to enable the implementation of the plan. One of the key focal points of the plan was identifying need for focused investment at the Canada malting property. It does cover the whole of the Bathurst Quay neighborhood, but the malting property was certainly a focus. And the neighborhood plan represented a bit of a pivot away from some of the prior thinking about revitalizing that important site, rather than sort of focusing solely on a big, exciting, but very expensive adaptive reuse idea for the silos. It sort of turned conventional thinking on its head and said, there's a lot we can do on this property to advance infrastructure reinvestment, heritage building restoration, expansion of public open spaces. Why don't we start with those projects, advance them independent of one another, but keep them very carefully coordinated according to a master plan, and build the momentum to kind of come back and finish with the silos at the end. And that really proved to be the kind of the change in approach that I think finally led us to making some long-awaited changes on this property. What did this project entail? And there's some images here from some of the projects that have been completed. We started with a thorough dock wall restoration along the Western Channel dock wall. We remediated a number of hotspots on this property, which was a former industrial site, so it had to go through a soil and groundwater remediation to make it suitable for parks and open space uses. We did undertake a full structural and aesthetic rehabilitation of the silos, so hopefully you've been to see them now. They have this almost like new, or maybe even sort of better than new appearance. They went through an extensive concrete restoration, a tinting, and a restoration of the original Heritage Canada malting silos, which we very faithfully restored after doing a laser scan of the original signage. And we built a new park, designed by a wonderful Canadian landscape architecture firm, PFS Studio. That park opened in October 2024, and it's named Bathurst Quay Common in recognition of the spirit of the Bathurst Quay community that guided and motivated this process. And that park, since it's open, has been home to numerous public art installations, movie nights, cultural events, and often frequently some really cool impromptu dance parties. So if you go down there at night, you'll often see salsa dancing and electronic music dance parties and so forth. Lastly on this, and then I promise I'll get into the CreateTO portion of the presentation, is I'm delighted to share that our partners at the nonprofit arts and cultural organization Canada Ireland Foundation, who were the group that first invested in Ireland Park on this property, really kind of created the impetus for everything that followed. We'll be opening the doors to the Corlick this spring, and the Corlick is really an extensive gutting and a reimagining of really quite a handsome heritage Art Deco building on the property. It was the former administrative building for the Canada malting operations. The Canada Ireland Foundation is nearly at the end of a journey that practically goes back 25 years. It's an idea that's been around for some time to repurpose this building for an arts and cultural jewel box in the heart of the Western Waterfront. If you go by the building, you'll see it says opening March 2026. They're not quite going to make March 2026, but I did have the advantage of getting a site tour, a sort of a check-in just last week. Drywall starting to go in, the elevators in. I mean, they're in the home stretch, so I think it'll be sometime this spring. So I hope you will visit and check it out later this year. But eventually, the pull and the lure of the Portlands did get a hold of me after just over 10 years working in the Waterfront Secretariat for the City of Toronto, again, primarily focused on Bathurst Quay. I was very, very pleased to be invited to join the Portlands team at CreateTO just over a year ago. And that's really what I'll be talking about for the rest of my remarks. And I thought I would talk a little bit at the beginning about who is CreateTO. I think some people have a general understanding of what CreateTO does, but I think it's fair to say a much lesser understanding of what CreateTO's role is broadly in the waterfront, but more specifically here in the Portlands. So in short, CreateTO is the city's real estate agency responsible for applying a strategic and citywide lens over the whole of Toronto's real estate holdings. We work very, very closely with our city colleagues in corporate real estate management, also known as CREM, who really oversee the kind of day-to-day transactional nature of the real estate portfolio. We sort of take a step back and provide a strategic oversight and decision-making lens to guide that portfolio into the future. By the numbers, that portfolio is impressive. It's more than 8,000 properties, nearly 7,000 buildings with a combined value of $27 billion across the 620 square kilometers of the city of Toronto. A bit of the nuts and bolts of our organization, we are governed by a local board of directors, and that board meets typically monthly to provide expert industry feedback in guiding our decision-making. It provides us with all of the necessary authority we need to enter into real estate transactions, and also just to ensure that we are, of course, operating in accordance with our shareholder direction, because the City of Toronto is our sole shareholder. So every decision we make, every project we undertake, every action we take is always very carefully aligned to be consistent with direction from City Council and alignment with city policy. We are a shop of about 90 full-time people, but our core Portlands team, where I work, in fact, where I am tonight in our little Portlands office at 29 Basin Street, is a small but mighty team of about 10 full-time people working here in the Portlands. But of course, we pull in various members of our broader team with necessary legal expertise, construction, development, communications, and so forth to support our work here in the Portlands. We have effectively three core lines of business here at CreateTO. The one that is most sort of internal facing to the city, we call Real Estate Solutions for DAX. DAX is just a kind of bureaucratic acronym for divisions, agencies, and corporations. So there's about 40 divisions, agencies, and corporations that all feed into and support a range of city programs and services. And we are the lead for providing real estate solutions to support each of those DAX. As an example, here in the Portlands, we're currently working with emergency medical services to identify a home for a new EMS facility to support the build out of Aquaman-Minising, which Kevin has just so wonderfully laid out. The real estate in and around Aquaman-Minising is being examined right now for how it can play a support role to support that growth, that community infrastructure over time. We're also really pleased to have been asked by City Council, again working with our city colleagues, to examine potential future reuse scenarios for Old City Hall, which is a National Historic Site. We're examining different opportunities to reuse that building, invite more public access, activation, foster local economic development, all, of course, under the auspices umbrella of a financially sustainable business plan. So that's a bit about what we do for real estate solutions. This middle category, I'd say, is probably the category for which, if people are familiar with CreateTO, are most familiar with our work, and that's in the housing sphere. CreateTO is the city's lead for delivering the City of Toronto's Housing TO 2020 to 2030 action plan. And we work very carefully with a lot of city and industry partners to realize and unlock the potential of city-owned lands to be activated for the delivery of more housing. And that's both market housing and affordable housing, working through the housing development offices. What that looks like today, we are extremely proud of the fact we have across the city 38 active housing files underway right now. And by active housing files, we mean housing files at all stages of due diligence, through planning approvals, to bringing RFPs out to market to engage private sector partners in the delivery of housing. That also entails right now 5 active construction sites, and those construction sites total more than 5,000 new homes actively in construction. So by the numbers, that means that CreateTO is actually, by number of units under construction actually places us as one of the, or among the largest housing developers working in the city of Toronto right now. And that's a fact we're all really proud of. I don't specifically work on that team, but I'm proud on behalf of my colleagues, to be clear. And then the third one is really what I'm going to talk in more detail about, which is the Portlands. And on behalf of the city of Toronto, CreateTO is in fact the majority landowner of the property here in the Portlands. We own and operate about 400 acres of land. Within that portfolio, we have 8 kilometers of dock walls under our care and stewardship, and more than 80 active tenancies with a very wide and diverse range of uses, from legacy maritime industrial uses to increasingly commercial and cultural activation uses, but also recreational uses. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we're advancing that role here on behalf of the city and working with partners like Waterfront Toronto and TRCA. Edward did promise me that I could sort of nerd out a little bit tonight. And so we had talked a little bit about the value of maybe talking about the history of how it is the city of Toronto came to become the majority landowner in the Portlands. And I know this group has a lot of very experienced and involved waterfront stakeholders and partners. So some of this history will be familiar to you, but maybe you'll learn something more about sort of the work we do and how we came to do it. The interesting thing about the history here is that the Toronto Harbour Commission, incorporated in 1911, is probably best known, and appropriately so, as a successor agency to the Toronto Port Authority, but perhaps lesser known is that it was in fact a joint federal and municipal agency with a really broad, really sweeping mandate and set of powers that involved planning, development, the leasing and sale of properties, the expansion of the port, the operation of the port, and so forth. So there in truth really isn't an agency working in the waterfront today that kind of matches the reach and the breadth of that authority. In some ways, the Harbour Commission responsibilities have been sort of divided up amongst the various partners working here today, of course, including the Toronto Port Authority, CreateTO, Waterfront Toronto, and various parts of the city of Toronto. The Toronto Harbour Commission promoted and expanded the port until a couple of really important shifts in the 1980s, when we saw sort of 2 major sort of informative events happen in that decade. One was there was a fairly precipitous drop in cargo volumes moving through the port, and that had largely to do with the loss of both oil. Imperial Oil was the largest tenant operating here, storing and managing large oil storage tanks, and coal. You may know that the Hearn plant was a coal-fired energy plant, and when that plant was powered down, the annual cargo volume in the Portlands dropped from roughly 5 to 6 million tons per year, closer to what we're still seeing today, which is in the kind of 2 to 2.3 million tons of cargo per year. The other kind of major milestone event that began in the 80s and carried us into the 90s was the start of what's most commonly known as the Crombie Commission, or the Royal Commission on the Future of the Toronto Waterfront. And of course, because the Harbour Commission, both a federal and a municipal agency, the Royal Commission had a certain authority, certain agency to make recommendations about its future role. And what the Royal Commission saw at that time was that given the Portlands had become less well utilized from this drop in cargo volumes, there was a potential and a need to think about separating the day-to-day port function from the long-term planning and ownership function. So that's a kind of a long way to just basically say there was a point at which the Royal Commission said, let's sort of break up the ownership of the port into separate parties. The bulk of that land ownership then transferred to the city of Toronto, where it still sits today. The balance of it still sitting with the Port Authority, primarily the marine terminal property at 8-on-1. TEDCO is a name you might be familiar with. TEDCO is the former, an existing real estate agency. We don't use that name much anymore, but that ownership was transferred to TEDCO in order to effectively isolate the city from the liability associated with the contamination that came with that property ownership, and of course the cost to maintain the dock walls. And as a last point on this, TEDCO is one of numerous sort of shell real estate corporations that in 2018 was folded under the umbrella of the CreateTO agency. Okay, so that's basically how CreateTO came to own and operate this property, because really through a service delivery agreement, we manage these assets on behalf of TEDCO, to whom this property was transferred back in the 90s. So I hope that's as clear as mud, but if it's not, we can come back through questions later and talk in a bit more detail about how that came to pass. So what then, now that we've established that this property went from the Harbour Commission to TEDCO and from TEDCO to CreateTO, what is it that CreateTO does here in the Portlands? And I think in this is actually something that, and it's partly in the role that I've started since I've joined here, is trying to frankly, tell this story a bit better, because I think it's not well known, and I think it can create some confusion and uncertainty around roles and governance and responsibilities. One of the main things that CreateTO does here in the Portlands is we oversee a lot of obviously leasing and property management functions, and I mentioned increasingly we're moving into interim activation as well. So with respect to leasing and property management, the Portlands, as I'm sure many of you know, is home to a significant portion of the Toronto film industry. We're very proud to host a number of those production studios for film and television. One of the largest being Pinewood Studios, which you see in the image top left here. Pinewood Studios came to the Portlands as a result of a competitive bid for a private joint venture consortium led by TEDCO back probably 20 or so years ago. And since having been selected as the proponent to deliver film studios to this property, they have constructed and are today operating about 450,000 square feet of film and television production space. So we're very, very happy to not only be effectively the landlord for Pinewood Studios, but we are also a joint venture partner with the studios. We're of course also home to a number of maritime and industrial uses that support critical construction industry and city serving industries. So for example, the movement and storage of cement, for aggregate and salt. In fact, by virtue of the city owning 400 acres of land in the Portlands, nearly half of the sort of bulk volume, the cargo that's moved through the Portlands each year, is handled over dock walls owned by CreateTO and onto properties activating or operating under tenancies managed by CreateTO. The balance of that cargo volume is handled and managed through a series of both private property owners and companies like Redpath Sugar and Amrise, the cement terminal at Polson Quay, and of course also the Toronto Port Authority operating at 8-on-1. I will just say quickly here on the question of salt storage, because we have our partners here from TRCA tonight. We're really pleased to be starting the first ever salinity monitoring program in the ship channel to monitor for and to put better systems in place to capture any runoff of road salt into the ship channel. To be clear, there are at-source mitigation measures in place on each of these properties today, but we know we could always do better. And so we're really excited to be working with TRCA to implement this new program and, for example, make sure there isn't sodium chloride finding its way into the new Don Greenway, which Waterfront Toronto has done such a wonderful job building and is now connected into the ship channel. So that's a program that we're exploring with TRCA right now and will get underway later this year. What else does CreateTO do in the Portlands? Well, we're really pleased to play a lot of different roles here, and one of those is support roles for the Waterfront Toronto-led Portlands Flood Protection Project. One of the principal advantages, I'd say, and this is kind of delivering or making good on the promise of the Crombie Commission and the Royal Commission of the Future of the Toronto Waterfront, is that this property that's been in city ownership for these many decades is effectively land banked and available to the city at no cost when the city decides it's needed for a legacy and intergenerational city building projects. And so the Portlands flood protection is a really good example of sort of making good on that long-term ambition and that big transformational move to transfer that property. As an example of that, since around 2018, Waterfront Toronto and Ellis Don have been licensing from CreateTO all of the property needed to deliver the Portlands flood protection project. That's about 130 acres in total. And now that we're near the end of the project, about 80 of those 130 acres are being permanently transferred to the City of Toronto in the form of the new River Valley, the amazing new parks that Kevin spoke of, but also certain infrastructure supports like road widenings. Our role in this regard is really to work closely with all of the flood protection projects on untangling all of the various sort of legacy easements and encumbrances you can imagine after 100 years of industrial and commercial uses on these properties, and to get them ready for transfer to the City of Toronto. I will say that the supporting real estate transactions is probably, I shouldn't admit this maybe, but probably the least exciting of the different roles we play here. But it's also a very necessary role in making sure that this project is completed, the property comes into city ownership. We're really proud to play that role. And of course, every once in a while you get a moment like the Bentway Lake story. I took this picture standing on the bridge, and I just had this moment like, wow, it's a really tremendous thing to play even a supporting role in this project. And we stand in awe of what Waterfront Toronto and the city and partners have delivered here. It's just a remarkable achievement. So moving then, I mentioned we play a lot of different roles. Sometimes it's a support role, like the real estate role we play in the Portlands, but we also, in certain instances, play a public-facing and leadership role in both the delivery of development projects in the Portlands, but also increasingly in public realm projects. So one great example, Leslie Lookout Park. This is a dynamic, newish park opened in 2024, late 2024. 2-acre park space designed by the late Claude Cormier, another Canadian seminal landscape architect, sadly passed away in 2023. I'm sure many of you know Claude was responsible for some of our most cherished park and public open spaces here in the city of Toronto, including, of course, Love Park, Sugar Beach, and Birksea Park. So this was one of Claude's last gifts to us here in the city of Toronto. We're really proud of this park. What we love about it is not only it's a really interesting, beautiful place to visit, but it also opens up for the first time really unprecedented views and a sense of connection to the historic ship channel, which is a really remarkable asset located right in the heart of the Portlands. But also, much like Sugar Beach, we think it does a really good job in demonstrating the compatibility of the old and the new, the legacy industrial commercial uses still coexisting very comfortably alongside the introduction of new park, public realm, and activation uses, and which is an important part of the story of the evolution of the Portlands, because both of those uses, the old and the new, do need to have both a past and a present and a future here. That image in bottom right is Basin Media Hub. So we're excited that we do have another film studio project in the works. Basin Media Hub, like Pinewood Studios, was chosen as a result of a competitive RFP process with our partners at Hackman Studios based out of California. When this project is completed, it will deliver a net new 12 new sound stages for film and media and television production here in Toronto. We'll also deliver an exciting, beautiful new Water's Edge promenade along the ship channel. So much like Leslie Lookout Park, beginning to expand that access and those vistas to the ship channel, and a rebuilt Basin Street. Unfortunately, this particular project, like just about every film studio that we engage with throughout North America and Europe, is experiencing a cyclical market slowdown in the film industry, particularly construction of new studio space. I'm afraid we don't currently have a commencement date for construction, but we're really proud of the fact the project is sufficiently advanced through its planning approvals and therefore very well positioned to pick back up where we've left off as soon as conditions improve. Another part of our role here in the Portlands is to aid and support future neighborhood and district planning. Kevin talked about the work that they're leading with an amazing consulting team from Allies Morrison, GHD, and SLA on the Oquaman-Minising precinct plans. So if you've been following the evolution of the Portlands planning framework, you know that each of the future planned mixed-use precincts in the Portlands, so those being Oquaman-Minising, Polson Key, South River, and McCleary, are each required to go through a precinct planning process to start to layer in more detail, building on the kind of high-level principles, vision, and character spelled out 10 years ago in the overarching planning framework document. McCleary is certainly a kind of farther out to start of like shovels in the ground than Oquaman-Minising. So the kind of full and realized precinct plan for McCleary is still a few years out, but we've been really pleased to lead a kind of preliminary foundational framework plan that's setting in place what that future study is going to look like. So beginning to carve out the alignment of future roads, including the Broadview extension. Also importantly, providing really important input into development applications within McCleary that are at various stages of approval, led by private sector applicants. And lastly, what does CreateTO do in the Portlands? We are increasingly involved in delivering major capital projects. And I like to think of a lot of these capital projects as really reinvesting in legacy infrastructure. Waterfront Toronto and the city are leading a lot of important investment in new communities, new roads, new parks. We're really excited to play a role in making sure that the infrastructure that has sustained and built up the character and the culture of the waterfront over the last 50 years is also seeing that reinvestment. A big part of that is dock wall rehabilitation. My colleague Jennifer Agrodnik, who is our director of construction and leading a citywide dock wall management program on behalf of the city, was here presenting to you a couple of months ago, so I'm not going to rehash her presentation. I will just point out that there is an update report on this citywide dock wall framework plan going to executive committee this May. And so there will be more details offered in that report around the scope of work, the coordination that we're leading on behalf of the city and partners, and the development of a 10-year maintenance and capital improvement plan for dock walls, not only in the Portlands, but across the citywide portfolio. And then the very last one, we are so delighted to be leading on behalf of our partners at both the City of Toronto and Harbourfront Centre, a rehabilitation of the Amsterdam Bridge, which I'm sure most of you here will know has been closed for a number of years due to disrepair. And we're working very feverishly, I'll say, to get this bridge safely reopened in time for the start of FIFA celebrations coming to the Toronto waterfront in June. We were really pleased to learn once we got into this project and completed a condition assessment. The bridge is actually overall in fair to good condition. The primary reason it's been closed is that the lift bridge span during the COVID lockdown had been left open and a windstorm damaged it. So a big part of this repair is actually just focusing on designing and installing a new static or fixed span to solve that gap. But we're also bringing the bridge up to code, in particularly with respect to the railings. They've sort of fallen behind in terms of contemporary standards for safety. So that's a big part of the project as well. And that work, as I say, actively underway. In fact, our construction team was on site on Monday this week, starting site measurements. We'll have shop drawings in a few weeks, and we'll be mobilizing on site in March. So we're really proud and really excited to be leading that project and again trying to get this bridge open in time for FIFA, which we are absolutely on track to do. Rapid fire, because I know the Waterfront for All group, and I know this group loves to stay connected and informed, which we all of us working in the waterfront really so sincerely appreciate your input, your feedback. So just a couple of things to note for you. As some of you may have already heard that the long-standing stalwart director of the Waterfront Secretariat, David Stonehouse, who's been very quietly and capably leading the Toronto Waterfront Revitalization Initiative on behalf of the City of Toronto, also my former boss, has announced his retirement at the end of March. And we're really thrilled that the city has selected Annalie Zonena to come in David's role. And Annalie is an old friend and colleague of mine. We go back to our university days. I know she's going to do a terrific job in this role. I'm certain you'll have her here speaking to you at some point in the near future. So we're all excited to and looking forward to welcoming Annalie into this important role. A couple of staff reports coming up that I'll just put on your radar. March 10th, there is a kind of a catch-all Portland's flood protection update report going to executive committee. So if you're interested in seeing the kind of wrap up as Portland's flood protection winds down, there will be a summary of what has been done there and just some of the loose ends we're all working together to tie up as that project comes to a close and Waterfront Toronto shifts their focus into delivery of equipment menacing. That same night, if you're not busy March 10th and you just can't get enough of the Portlands, and I know Kevin already mentioned this, there's going to be a Portlands public open house at the Ralph Thornton Community Center the evening of March 10th. And I believe Kevin had mentioned there's more details, I think, about to be publicized for that. Our staff report or update on the McCleary District Framework Plan coming to Planning and Housing Committee in April. I mentioned our Dockwells update report coming to Executive Committee in May. May 23rd and 24th, of course, is this year's Doors Open. We're really excited to be opening the doors to a heritage building we own in the Portlands, right next to the Cherry Street Barbecue. It's this really interesting little Toronto hydro building. It's not very big, so manage your expectations, please. But on the inside of the building, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be opening up our impressive archive of, you can see one of them behind me here. We have a great collection of old maps, plans of subdivisions, drawings, and archival photos. So we're going to be setting up a kind of exhibit of sorts in that building at 25 O'Quinn. So we hope we'll see you there for Doors Open. And then I mentioned by early June, we're working towards completing and safely reopening the Amsterdam Bridge for all of us to enjoy. And with that, I've got my name, my email, my phone number here. Please don't ever hesitate to reach out with any questions. Thank you so much. It's been great to be back with Waterfront for All this evening.
Thank you so much, Bryan. You squeezed a lot into a short time period. I really appreciate it. Well done, sir. Well done.
Thank you.
Your reward will be us inviting you back.
You got to bring Annalie back, though.
Yeah, I absolutely. Like maybe like in her first week, we'll do that.
If you do that, it wasn't my idea. Okay,
Yeah,
I
no,
don't want to get in trouble with the new
are you
Waterfront
sure?
Secretary Director.
We'll say that. Okay. We're just going to move brilliantly on. And hi, Johanna. I'm just going to spotlight you here. So it is my pleasure to ask Ms. Kyte to come and speak to us once again from one of our favorite agencies, TRCA. Over to you, and thanks for being with us this evening.
Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, we're all good. Great. Okay, so I'm so happy to be back here again at Waterfront for All AGM. I'm Johanna Kyte, the Senior Manager of Waterfront Government and Community Relations at TRCA. So I've prepared a bit of a presentation to go over some updates in terms of the work that TRCA has been doing over the last year, but also just like to, for those who aren't as familiar with TRCA, give a bit of background on who we are, how we came to be, and what we do around the region. So it was about 72 years ago that Hurricane Hazel really transformed the region's approach to planning. And this was such a catastrophic event, storm event for the region. And it really transformed the way we look at things and taught us to protect people and property through respect for natural systems. And that's really at the heart of what TRCA does. And so since 1957, so following Hurricane Hazel, conservation authorities were created to help protect people and property from major storm events and flooding, which is the major cause of natural disasters in Ontario. And so since then, TRC has been working with our government partners using a very data-driven and scientific approach to support planning decisions, asset management, infrastructure delivery, and stewardship of our ecological spaces for the long-term health of our cities and watersheds. So in terms of TRCA's role on the waterfront and along rivers, we are responsible for mitigating flood and erosion along rivers and shorelines, and these are primarily impacted by high lake levels, storms causing runoff, heavy wave action, and precipitation. And we're increasingly seeing more severe storm events, which has an increasing effect on our shorelines and rivers. So in terms of what TRCA does, one of the key roles for us is monitoring forecasts, and then we work very closely with our municipal partners who then carry out emergency responses when it comes to storm events. We also identify and monitor potential shoreline and valley erosion hazards, and also identify strategies to mitigate them. We're also involved in reviewing development in relation to shoreline and valley risks and hazards. We also manage and maintain quite a number of erosion and flood protection structures and infrastructure along our rivers and shorelines. And then we also support many public sector partners and municipalities in delivering projects that help to mitigate risks, provide opportunities for safe access, and also help to improve our ecological features. And so the other thing that there's two types of flooding. And so municipalities and conservation authorities work very closely with one another. Conservation authorities are responsible for riverine and shoreline flooding where water overtops banks. And then municipalities, we work in collaboration, but municipalities are responsible for urban flooding, which happens when there's overfilling of stormwater systems that can lead to issues like street flooding and basement flooding. When it comes to the waterfront, TRCA, we are all over the place. Everywhere from the Mississauga border out to Ajax, because our jurisdiction covers the Lake Ontario shoreline for over 72 kilometers across the central Lake Ontario region. So I'm not going to talk about all of our projects, but we'll just hit on a few big projects with major milestones coming up. And so in terms of, I talked about TRC having many shoreline erosion risk management structures across the waterfront. And many of those were created back in the 60s and are coming to the end of their structural lifespan. So you'll also see a lot of projects along the Toronto waterfront where our teams are actively doing repair and maintenance to shoreline structures like revetments, groins, headlands, to make sure that this city's infrastructure such as parks, stormwater outfalls continue to be protected against major storms. And so there's a number of projects, especially in Etobicoke over the next few years, Etobicoke and Scarborough, where we're actively doing erosion risk management work. And we've been very lucky to have support from the Disaster Mitigation Adaptation Fund through the federal government to carry out a number of these projects through to 2033. So this is a project that is, although it's not in the City of Toronto or a TRCA project, we've been very involved in supporting Credit Valley Conservation, our neighbors just to the west in Peel Region and the City of Mississauga, in delivering Jim Tovey Lakeview Conservation Area, which is a huge new landform and public park that will help to connect the Mississauga waterfront, and the Toronto waterfront. So TRC has been highly involved. All of our construction services were delivered through TRCA in partnership with Credit Valley Conservation. And one of the exciting things is this is going to create a new waterfront trail linkage. And I believe it's over 4 kilometers of new waterfront trail that will link the two cities. And this new park is expected to be open the spring of 2026. And there's a significant amount of work that has gone into creating lots of shoreline restoration, new marsh and ecological areas, and it will be a new hub for wildlife and a new spot for folks to access the waterfront. Moving into Toronto, we did want to provide a brief update on the Toronto Island Flood and Erosion Mitigation EA that TRCA recently completed. The EA is now complete and has been submitted to the province, and now TRC is actively working with Parks and Recreation at the City of Toronto to advance implementation. Currently, now we're in the pre-planning phase of detailed design. We're in the process of putting together an RFP and working together with our colleagues at the City of Toronto to start to advance that work. So there'll be more updates available later on in the year on how that work is going to roll out. We've also begun work on a coastal assessment for Hanlan's Beach and Gibraltar Point, and this is to look at the remaining section of Hanlan's Beach closer to the airport from Gibraltar Point, where there's been significant erosion over the last few years, and looking at strategies to protect and enhance this area of beach, as it's a really important beach and public space for the City of Toronto on the island. So we're doing that work also in collaboration with Parks and Recreation as part of the Toronto Islands Master Plan implementation. Badasking Park and Ucluelet-Minising has been mentioned quite a few times tonight, and so TRC does have a continuing role as part of that project, and our role is more in the monitoring and management of all of the new river valley infrastructure that has been constructed. So TRC is supporting the city and Waterfront Toronto in terms of management of the river valley infrastructure. And this includes a lot of activities related to monitoring for compliance related to the EA, as well as managing wildlife and ecosystems. And so our teams are out there, out in their boats, out in their hip waders, doing aquatic monitoring, taking water sampling, and we're really seeing the benefits of this project now with all sorts of new fish and wildlife entering into the river valley. So it's really great to see all of this hard work paying off. Another key project for us is Tommy Thompson Park, which is the TRCA-owned portion of land on the Leslie Street spit. And Tommy Thompson Park has really been a success story over the last few years. We're receiving hundreds of thousands of visitors now, and it's become a real hotspot for birding, active recreation, and experiencing the outdoors. We also run numerous education programs and facilities out on the spit. And so the City of Toronto has partnered with TRCA to basically do a visitor experience plan study. And the point of the visitor experience plan study is really to look at identifying and prioritizing both operational and physical changes needed to address the growing use and popularity of the park, and making sure that it stays consistent with the master plan framework for Tommy Thompson Park. So we're expecting engagement for this study to roll out in the spring of this year. So if you want to, we encourage you to join the mailing list for the Tommy Thompson on the Tommy Thompson Park website, and you can stay informed about when that engagement will roll out. And so what I mentioned the Tommy Thompson Park master plan that was created a number of years ago. And that master plan has 4 key objectives, which is related to preserving significant species, preserving the environmentally significant areas, as well as enhancing aquatic and terrestrial habitat opportunities, but also creating opportunities for public recreation. And those 4 principles will guide the development of the visitor experience plan. This isn't looking at redoing or changing the master plan. It's really looking at how do we adapt the park to the current environment while keeping true to those key principles. And Tommy Thompson Park has really been a success story. We've received a number of awards over the last couple of years. It's now a key biodiversity area and an environmentally significant area. And we recently had staff go to Geneva in Switzerland to receive an international award related to restoration. So we're really happy with the success that we've seen in our restoration services out at Tommy Thompson Park. There's also mention of the Scarborough Waterfront earlier tonight, and so we've been working on delivering studies and projects in the Scarborough Waterfront for quite a while now, and we just want to make sure that folks understand the different areas. So currently, we have an active EA, which is called the Scarborough Bluffs West EA, which is the western portion of Scarborough, and this runs from Victoria Park over to Bluffers Park. And so that study is underway right now. The other segments, the Scarborough Waterfront project, which is what you see in green, blue, and yellow, that is an environmental assessment that was completed in 2019, and we're now in the delivery phase for the west segment of the Scarborough Waterfront project. And so we'll get into more detail about that. But this just gives you an overview and an orientation of the different study areas.
Okay.
So the Scarborough Bluffs West project area. So this is completed in coordination with the City of Toronto. It's a
Hang on sorry. Johanna, I'm just going to interrupt you for 1 second. Sorry. Could people mute their mics? Someone's got their mic on. Can you please mute it? Someone has their mic on. Please mute it. Hello? Please mute your mics. Someone has their mic on. Can you please kindly mute your mic? Thank you. Sorry about that, Johanna. Please continue.
No worries. So this is the study that we completed the terms of reference phase. And this is the initial phase of the environmental assessment, which basically just lays out how is the study going to take place. It basically documents what we're going to study, what types of engagement we're going to undertake. That was approved in October of 2025. So we're now in a position to move forward into the environmental assessment stage. So as I mentioned, the terms of reference was completed between 2023 and 2025. Now we're moving to the environmental assessment stage, and we're expecting the first round of engagement to start in the spring of this year. So it's perfect timing. If you're interested in the Scarborough Waterfront, we really encourage everyone to sign up for the mailing list on the City of Toronto's website and participate in the engagements. Some of the key focuses of the study are really looking at the official plan direction to improve access, equity, and connectivity along the Scarborough Waterfront, while also preserving and enhancing the ecological features. So no decisions have been made yet. We are just starting the study. We'll look at a range of options. So we encourage you to participate, stay informed, and come out to our engagement events that will be kicking off later on in the spring. Following the EA, these types of EAs typically take a couple of years to complete. Following that and council approval, then the project would move into delivery phase. So moving further east on the Scarborough Waterfront project, this is where we already have a completed EA and recommended design solutions that were endorsed by council. We have now moved into construction of the west segment, which includes the Brimley multi-use trail and the west shoreline segment. This project is being delivered in a sequential phases from west to east. And so the other central segment and the east segment would not move forward until we complete the western portions. And that's partially due to funding and partially due to just access construction staging. So in terms of the Brimley Road South multi-use trail, what this will do is it'll connect the top of Brimley Road down to Bluffers Park. Ground broke in the fall of 2025. This will provide a separated multi-use trail with rest areas partway down the hill. It'll accommodate a range of users to provide access down to the water and the Brimley Park, Bluffers Park rather. So here's a bird's eye view of what the trail will look like. It's quite a it's a lengthy stretch of slope there, and it's a steep slope. And so we'll be constructing this through the 2026 summer season, and then with hopes of it being open in 2027. In terms of the west segment shoreline area, this is the area to the west of Bluffers Park, all the way over to Meadow Cliff. And what this area looks at is creating some additional headlands, which allows the creation of the waterfront trail connection along this segment, which you can see with the yellow dots there. So on the left-hand side of my screen, you can see a large expanded headland, and then on the right-hand side, a groin that is sticking out. And what that will do is it helps to protect this area from erosion and keep the beach and landform in place, and then allows the expanded parkland areas. So this is quite an extensive landfill or lake fill project to create these landforms. And so we are going through the pre-construction planning and permitting process right now, and we hope to have construction begin in early 2027. And this will be a multi-year construction process. And so this construction will take a number of years due to the scale and size of the work that needs to take place here. And this is just a artist rendering of what we envision the trail to look like. Again, separated uses, nice and wide for a range of different users, and also incorporating those ecological restoration features into the design. And finally, I wanted to finish off and go back to the idea that our TRCA, we are stewards of the Toronto waterfront, but we also participate in lake health on a lake-wide basis. One of our key initiatives is the Western Lake Ontario Land to Lake Initiative, where we work binationally, and we also work with a number of municipalities throughout the Lake Ontario region to really advance projects that improve lake health, improve access and safe access to the lake, and help through restoration projects to delist areas of concern for the lake and really, bring back that healthy lake environment. So this is kind of core to all of the work that TRCA does, and we're really happy to have partners that support the work that we do and great communities that also support this type of work with TRCA and our partners. So ongoing, our priorities continue to be to focus on a data-driven approach and use our expertise in shorelines and rivers to support our partners in delivering work. We try to collaborate with a diverse set of partners and stakeholders to deliver our work, and we're always exploring new opportunities to incorporate resiliency and stewardship into city building. So thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you very much, Johanna. That was great. So I'm going to call on our esteemed chair, Ed Hore, and our esteemed Ed. Hi, Ed. How are you?
I'm great.
I'm just going to add a spotlight. Bryan's still here with us. Hi there. Okay. And for some reason, it's not letting me spotlight you. I don't know why. Oh, there we are. Maybe you're trying to be shy. And Kevin's still here. Hi, Kevin.
Hello.
I know we're getting on. Now, I want you to know I'm going to encourage everyone to stay for our AGM, which I promise you will be lightning fast. And maybe we might even offer a free Waterfront for All membership. We might just do that as a prize for someone who stays. Or maybe I'll just come, maybe we'll just ship you a Snickers bar, or something like that. Anyway, I shouldn't have to bribe you. Anyway, do we have any quick questions? Ed, is there anything you wanted to quickly ask any of our guests to clarify before we move on to our lightning fast AGM?
I guess I did. Johanna, buried somewhere in some website or staff report or something, there was something about a kind of a multi-use trail eventually being considered that would essentially go more or less the length of the Scarborough Bluffs, or at least a very substantial portion of it. And it's all speculative. It's complicated. There's erosion. There's sensitive environment. Is it and I understand that it may not happen, and if it happens, it might be on the ground or it might be kind of a raised platform. Is that something that I understand that nothing's decided, but is that sort of something that's on the horizon that you're kind of looking at? Am I right about that?
So I'll separate my answer into, for the Scarborough Waterfront project area, which is the area where the EA was completed in 2019, that for that segment of Scarborough, there are concept designs approved by the province and by council for multi-use for trail connections throughout that length of Scarborough. In terms of the Scarborough Bluffs West EA area, so the framework of the study is, there's a number of city policies that direct staff to look at increasing connectivity and access to the waterfront throughout all of Toronto. And so this is partly what the study contemplates is, are there ways to create connectivity and access to the waterfront within all of the other policy and strategic frameworks of the city? So as part of an EA process, we consider those policy documents talking about connectivity and access, but also the ecological components, the natural hazards, the long-term costs and feasibility. And so that's what we're really just contemplating right now as part of this EA process, or what are the alternative solutions to potentially achieve this type of access and connectivity. And so this includes looking at do-nothing scenarios, and it will contemplate, on-road solutions through the existing neighborhoods. It will contemplate a range of solutions to potentially create connectivity both at the top of the tablelands, at the top of the slope, and at the bottom of the slope. And so that's what we'll be looking for. We'll be evaluating both the feasibility and the feedback from members of the public and a wide range of technical experts through the EA process. Does that answer your question?
More or less, yeah. Like you're thinking about it, I guess.
And as I'll just mention that we are Waterfront for All has a spot on the Stakeholder Advisory Committee for the EA. So that's something we'll be reporting back to a lot. Is there anything that I know, again, people are continually concerned, and I know you all understand this, Bryan, Kevin, I know you understand this, that, and when you said we hope to have positive news, maybe sometime about the LRT, I know there were a number of like, oh, so I guess if you know something, you can't tell us, but I guess you're hoping that there will be something, you're genuinely hoping there's going to be something to be said about that within the year. Would that be a fair way of framing it?
I can't predict. All I can say is that we've been spending a lot of time trying to make sure that all levels of government understand how important transit is. I know it's something that has been long awaited. I think my colleagues have told me it's 19 years in the making. But the good news is there's a lot of attention on infrastructure investments. There's also a broader waterfront that has already started to emerge. So it's not like we're planning a transit line where there's nobody living there. So we've already got quite a bit of development either underway or completed. And conversations have been positive, but Ed, I can't predict. I know that we've done every possible thing we can to advance design, to make sure we're ready for the day that government say it's time to finally build this transit line that's so long awaited.
Right. I know that there's some, there's a lot of transit improvements we could think about. I know that a couple of folks, and I know it's outside of the TRCA's mandate. This is one of the things sometimes that frustrates people, and Johanna has no control over this. But I know when we were doing the draft terms of reference part, that this is the part you do with basically it's like the agenda for the EA, and that's when Johanna mentioned that had been approved at the end of 2025. Some of us were involved in that from the community side, like myself, for example. And one of the things we talked about, which is outside the scope, unfortunately, is transit connections to the Scarborough waterfront. There's as was mentioned in the chat, there's a seasonal bus service to Bluffers Park. Uh, but for example, if you get off a Scarborough Go, for example, you can't get anywhere from there to the waterfront. This is one of those weird things. So I'm not sure. Maybe we'll have to have a further speaker series where we talk about how we can improve some of the overlays that aren't addressed, right? And Brian, I appreciate the history of the Portlands you gave us in terms of who owns what and how that came to be. And I know too, Waterfront Toronto has its limits to scope, right? There are things you can't address because they're sort of up here somewhere, floating somewhere. But that's something I know, because I mean, a long-standing thing for us is besides preserving and enhancing the quality of the waterfront, one of our, you might say, agendas in advocacy and information is improving accessibility in a way that's compatible with safety and environmental stewardship, right? So, on the theory that people don't value what they can't touch or see. Anyway, thank you very much, Bryan, Kevin, Johanna. It is a privilege and honor to have you with us. And I guess we should get to our AGM. Friends, please hang around. We promise this will be quick and painless. Quick and painless. Um,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have
It's a
a
real
great-
pleasure. Please
Great.
have us back.
We will. Okay, Ed. I'll just re-up the agenda. Okay, so I think we're just largely going to do this on the honor system. I assume that you will know if you've given us $20 in the last year, or if you're here representing an organization that belongs to Waterfront at all, please tell us just shout out your name and if you want to move or second this, and tell us the organization you're representing, or if you're an individual member. Whether you gave us 140 for a lifetime membership or 20 sometime in the past, say 13 months, when we brought in the individual membership rule at our last AGM, just say your name. So can someone move that we approve the minutes of last year's AGM? Don't be shy. Unmute yourself and shout it out.
Yeah, I'll say approve the last year's AGM.
And is that Steve Mann?
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Steve. Do I have a seconder for that?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ed. Brilliant. That was Preludes. We shared the financial report with you. Ed, do you want to say something about that just very, very quickly?
Yeah, very quickly. Can you put it up on the screen?
I think I probably can actually.
It's
Hang
hard,
on.
forget it. Don't worry about it.
I can look for it. Start talking and I'll just
Okay.
bring it up.
I'm the sort of interim treasurer due to the fact that nobody seems to have stepped up to fill that honorable position. But we're actually doing a little better than last year. We have somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000. Our main expenses we basically have to pay to upkeep our website, and that costs us somewhere north of $200 a month. It is great to have some donations coming in because otherwise we're worried about how we might have to unplug it. So keep those donations coming. It keeps the wolf from the door. Thanks very much.
Here we are.
Oh, here you are.
Okay. I think I can share this
Exact
now.
number.
Yeah, I'll try to share it now.
Off the top of my head, what it is. Okay.
Sorry, it's not really doing a
Yeah,
very good job of showing.
4,579 as of last week. So
There we
better
go,
than
yeah.
last year we were I think in the hundreds and having to scrounge up some cash to keep the website going. So thanks very
Right.
much. Those of you who donated, we appreciate it very much.
Yeah,
Ed,
we're
did
very,
you ever
very
check
grateful.
in with Ed? Did you ever check in with Perry about slashing website costs?
We did, and we're gonna. It's a work in project,
It's a work in progress.
to do that. So we'll see if we can do it. Where we like the devil we know, just because we're not confident of our own technical skills well enough to know how easily and quickly we could adapt to another system. But it might be worth doing, no question. We did actually reach that guy that you put us on to. And he was going to give us a report, and it sounded like it was going to be a year of turmoil to get it set up, and we weren't absolutely sure. We're still thinking about it, though. So thank you for getting him on to us, Steve.
Sure, sure.
And I mean, one thing I'm going to let you know too. We are working actively. Some of you have come on our walks that we've been doing, and we are going to be working actively to create some more in-person events this coming year. And we've gone with walks, which seem to be popular, which I appreciate everyone who's turned out for them, and they are relatively inexpensive or free, really. And we appreciate that everyone is still sticking with us on Zoom. Because it's in 2019, I think we had our last AGM at Metro Hall, and we managed to snag that for I think close to zero through the beneficence and luck and just pestering of people. But yeah, I mean, and occasionally we can perhaps get access to free space. But obviously, I'm sure all of you realize that if you have to rent space, an organization like ours, which runs on blood, sweat, and tears, and your modest and very donations, which we're very grateful for, it would knock a huge hole in our budget to do that. So we do persist with Zoom for many of our meetings, and on a night like tonight, I'm sure everyone's glad that we're doing Zoom. So yeah, that's it. So can I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
Can I guess I can't move
You
to
can't.
approve my own
No,
report.
sorry, Ed.
I unmuted myself. It's Liz McGroarty.
Thank you, Liz. You're moving to accept the treasurer's report.
I am.
Do I have a seconder for that?
I'll second it. Eliza James.
Thank you, Liza. Unless there's any further debate, I'm assuming we're going to accept it and approve it. Thank you very, very much. Okay. And now, if I remember, um, okay, so voting for directors. We have a slate of directors, I believe, which I will find and put up. Proposed directors. Okay. We will.
While you're finding it, I'll just say to anybody who feels they are attracted to the red button that says donate on it, don't be shy. Feel free to push that button and send us a little bit of money. We always appreciate it.
So here we have our list of directors proposed on the slate. Ed Hore, Chair, Ron Jenkins, Secretary, Edward Nixon, I don't know who that guy is, Eastern Waterfront, Gordon Wamsley, Pam Mazza, Norm DeVasquale, Steve Mann, Bryan Eiler. We do have room. If there's an insurgent nomination on the floor, I will do what you should do, which is call for nominations. Are there any other nominations for board members? Are there any other nominations for board members? Let me tell you about our annual board retreat in Aruba. No, that of course is not actually a thing. More like our annual board retreat on the Toronto Islands. The Pam Mazza usually has at least one meeting at her lovely home on the island. So that is something that I do. Jeffrey, you're raising your hand. Did you want to say something? Just unmute yourself. Jeffrey? Jeffrey. Well, once you unmute yourself, I'll let you talk. You'll be welcome to talk. Are there any other nominations for board positions? Okay, seeing none, I ask for someone to move that we accept the slate as presented. May I have a motion to that effect?
Anna Prodano.
Yes?
Anna Prodano.
Anna Perdano. Oh, Anna was on our board before, but she chose to step aside. So unless she's here and agrees, we'd be thrilled to have her. But unless she's here to agree, if she's not here to agree, then I think we'd have to kindly say we will continue to accept her resignation, which she offered us with regret, based on a variety of personal factors.
Just to be clear, was Anna speaking to nomination or was she moving to accept the slate?
Oh,
I
Hillary, sorry.
was speaking to accept the slate.
That's
Oh,
fine.
okay, that was you speaking. Sorry, I saw someone
Yes,
else's
Ed.
hand up. It was very confusing. I thought you were going to like come back and join us for a minute there.
No, no, I'm not.
Damn! Not even with the board retreat in Aruba. We only have to raise another like 400 grand and we can pull that off. Okay, thank you. Anyone seconding that?
Stephen Richards, I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you, Stephen. Um, all in favor? I'm just going to say, just click a thumb or a heart or a reaction and we're good to go. Thank you. Well,
Excellent.
thank you, and thank you to our directors, and thank you to everyone who participated. Sorry for the confusion about that, Anna. It was just, and I will say this: if you change your mind, or if you ever get curious, um, being on our board is what you make of it. There are no particularly necessarily arduous duties. The minimum requirement is attending our monthly meetings, and then it's just about how much you want to, how much you want to bring to the table and be involved or not. Um, or if you think of someone that you would like to get more involved, we also have our most active committee is our speaker series / events or walks and speakers events committee. Would be, whether you're technically a board member or not, we would be thrilled to have, people who might like to get involved in that. You can just you could flip me an email, edward@edwardnixon.com. Or you can, and if you're interested in that, we're always interested in that. And then, of course, as we're planning more walks, it's also very useful to have more volunteers, to help be docents and shepherd people along. I know we're working on we had a very popular event with but Exhibition Place, and we are working on a walk through Exhibition Place to look at the developments and changes and improvements there. And Ed, we're also there's another couple of walk ideas we're thinking about, aren't there? You're still muted, sir. Oh,
You're on mute.
oh, there you are.
Well, we got various things floating around. We have an event with the Board of Trade because they've done a report on connectivity with the waterfront and have agreed to come and speak, as I understand it. So that's coming.
Yes, we're hoping to schedule that for the end of March.
So that'll be good. And
Mhm.
we've got various other things sort of floating around that we haven't quite pinned down yet.
And I think we may want to take another stroll through the Portlands as well. That might be something we want to do.
Yeah.
And I'm also interested if any of you think this is a good idea. I'm interested in doing something once the weather permits, once the glaciers recede. I'm interested in doing something on the Scarborough waterfront. Many of you may have been there, many of you may not have been there. It is the largest section of the City of Toronto's waterfront. And there are some fascinating walks there. There are some rough and ready ones, and there's some ones that are a bit, challenging. Of course, the trouble with large sections of the bluffs is if you go down to them on foot, you sort of have to come back up the hill. But yes, and we may, depending on what the TRCA and the city are doing with the West Scarborough Bluffs thing, there may be an opportunity for people to join their activities, and we will be sharing that with all of you as well.
We also had Don Boyle come to speak to us about Exhibition Place, and he was interested in perhaps leading a walking tour through Exhibition Place once the weather was a little bit warmer.
Yes, and then we'll all go to Rick Amos's house afterwards for supper, right? I shouldn't say that. Rick isn't with us anymore. Isn't with this meeting anymore. He has to go. He has to leave. But yeah, that's something else. And so, if you have ideas, if you have thoughts, contact us. Let us know if your things or topics you're interested in hearing about. please let us know. We'd be thrilled to get input, comment, involvement. And thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming to our AGM. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your ongoing support. And hopefully we will see you. We will as soon as we confirm our speaker series event for the end of March, we'll let you know. And hopefully we'll see you again soon. Thank you very much for coming.
All right,
Good
and hopefully
night.
see some of you tomorrow at the cold plunge if you want to come.
That's right, Steve. I shared that information in the chat. If you want
Yes,
to
that was wonderful.
go and have a swim and a dive in snow.
I'll be watching from the shore. Okay.
And we also do growler boarding. We get on the ice and paddle. So I was on a 50-foot yacht made of ice on Sunday. So on Sundays we go down and do growler boarding, bring a paddle, come on down, paddle on some ice.
Do I have permission to sip an espresso in my down jacket and watch?
Yes. Yeah, come on down and cheer us on.
Do it.
We don't go far from shore. We just paddle right along the shore for safety. So feel free to come on down. Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Good
Yeah,
night.
thanks.
Bye.
Good night.